So you've been hearing a lot about this API economy lately, right? And you're not really sure what all the fuss is about.
Yeah, I hear you.
It could feel like another tech buzzword, can't it?
Definitely.
But today we're diving into Designing Great Web APIs by James Higginbotham.
Okay.
And we'll see that it's actually a lot more relevant than you might think.
Oh, interesting.
We've got excerpts from the book here, and it's full of really practical advice.
Oh, yeah.
The cool thing is it covers the business side and the actual design side.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The stuff that makes developers either love or hate using an API.
Right, right.
Because it really is about the experience, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just about the tech itself, but how it feels to use it.
Exactly. So let's start with the basics. What is an API? Not the tech jargon, but something anyone can grasp.
Okay, imagine you're at a restaurant.
Okay.
The menu is like an API. It lists the dishes, the data, and how to order the functions.
Okay, I'm following.
You tell the waiter what you want, they relay that to the kitchen makes it and sends it back.
So the waiter's like the messenger.
Exactly. It's a set of rules for how systems talk to each other, exchange information.
Okay, I get it now. The restaurant analogy works. But how does that turn into a whole economy?
Well, the book breaks down the rise of the API economy into 4 reasons.
Okay, yeah, where do we even begin with that?
To keep it simple, modern APIs often use HTTP, the language of the web,
Right.
meaning almost any device can use them.
Ah, so no special tech needed anymore.
Not really, just the internet.
So they're becoming more accessible.
Exactly. And our world is all about apps, websites, the Internet of Things, all API reliant.
We're becoming API dependent.
Pretty much. And this is where things get interesting. The book says, treat your API like a product.
A product? Okay, I'm intrigued. Why should I care if I'm not building one?
It's about the impact of good design. Take internal innovation, your team can move faster.
Oh, I see.
And it's not just internal. APIs can reach new partners, customers.
So business implications, not just tech.
Absolutely. And get this, it can even influence customer acquisition and retention.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Surprising, right?
So say I'm ready to design one. Where do I even start?
The book talks about this outside-in approach.
What's that?
Basically, design from the user's perspective.
Sure.
You wouldn't want your API to mirror your database exactly. It'd be confusing.
Right, don't overcomplicate it.
The book uses this car analogy. You wouldn't want the dashboard designed by the engine mechanics, right?
Makes sense. Keep the user in mind.
Exactly. Focus on their experience.
And speaking of understanding, the book is big on documentation.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the instruction manual, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about putting together furniture with a bad manual.
Oof, the worst.
Bad API documentation is a developer's nightmare.
Okay, so good documentation is key.
It's part of that contract we talked about, a shared language, clear, complete, accessible.
Makes sense. So it makes for great documentation.
Format's huge. Forgot static PDFs, they go out of date too fast.
What?
HTML is better, always updated, searchable, even interactive.
Wait, interactive. Tell me more.
Imagine testing the API within the documentation itself.
Whoa, really?
You see sample requests, responses, get a feel for it before writing code.
That's incredible, like a practice run.
Exactly. It makes all the difference.
Yeah.
It does. And when designing APIs, consistency is so important. It's like when things are consistent, they become predictable.
And predictability makes everyone happy.
Right. Developers can quickly understand your API, no more second guessing.
So how do I be consistent when designing an API?
Let's start with naming things. No weird abbreviations or internal jargon.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Think from the user's perspective and structure your URLs logically, like folders on a computer.
Creating a clear system, everything in its place.
Exactly. And the data itself, its format should follow predictable rules like good grammar.
Makes sense. So we've got building blocks, data structure, but the book also talks about workflows.
That's right. Think about how developers will actually use your API, not just the data.
Okay, so like anticipating their needs.
Yeah. Anticipate common tasks and make them easy. Don't force them to piece together a bunch of calls.
Provide a more streamlined process. I like it.
Exactly. The book gives this great example from Twilio. They initially had low-level APIs for calls and texts,
Okay.
but users needed to build complex things like conference calls.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of work every time.
It was. So they created a higher-level conference call API, simplified things, made it more appealing.
Like the difference between buying ingredients versus a meal kit.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, documentation, consistency, workflows. What else?
Yes. Security. From day one, not an afterthought. Sensitive data is everywhere these days.
Like building a house, you don't add logs after it's built.
Exactly. Security from the foundation up. The book breaks it down well, starting with authentication.
Right, verifying who's using the API.
Could be passwords, API keys, even those sign in with Google buttons.
There's so many options these days.
And once you know who, you need authorization. What are they allowed to do?
Different access levels make sense.
You don't want everyone seeing or changing everything.
And then there's this thing called data leakage, which sounds kind of scary.
It can be. When an API accidentally exposes info it shouldn't.
The book mentioned that happened with Tinder, right? Users' locations were leaked.
Yes, it's a major risk. Be careful what your API exposes, especially moving from internal to external use.
Makes you think twice about what you share.
It really does.
And of course, using secure connections is a must.
Absolutely. No question about it these days.
Okay, recap time. Design, documentation, security. What's next?
Well, even the best docs aren't always enough. Sometimes developers need examples, you know?
Like seeing the code in action.
Exactly. It's that aha moment. The book talks about milestones for learning an API, how examples help along the way.
Okay, walk me through these milestones.
First is, for success, get devs up and running ASA, a simple hello world example.
Yeah, remove those barriers to entry.
Right. Then workflow support, multiple API calls together, doing complex things.
So they've leveled up from Hello World.
Exactly. Clarity is key here. Good comments in the code, descriptive names like writing instructions.
Make it easy to follow. So we've got basics, workflows. What's the final milestone?
Production-ready integration, nitty-gritty details of real-world apps, error handling, rate limits, unexpected input.
The make or break stuff?
Exactly. Show developers how to build robust, reliable integrations. Battle-tested code examples are gold.
It's like giving them a blueprint.
Exactly.
Okay, so much covered. Documentation, consistency, security, examples. Is there anything else?
Yes. One more thing the book mentions, helper libraries. Enhance that developer experience.
Helper libraries, what are those?
They're like pre-built toolboxes for different programming languages.
Okay.
Say you're a Java developer using a specific API. A Java helper library would have all the code you need to get started.
So no need to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. Huge time saver. It shows the API provider cares about ease of use.
Going that extra mile.
Big differentiator these days.
You know, we started talking about the API economy, but it's really about people, isn't it?
Absolutely. We get caught up in the tech, but the human element is key.
Developers making tools that are enjoyable to use, businesses connecting, users benefiting.
And that's why these principles are so valuable. They help you understand our digital world.
You know, I keep thinking about the restaurant analogy. So simple, yet it illustrates how APIs are everywhere.
It does. When they're well designed, they make life easier, more efficient, even enjoyable.
So let's wrap up with key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay.
First, APIs are more than jargon, they're building blocks. Understanding them is a real advantage. Second, good design is about more than just function. It's about experience, leading to better products for everyone. And third takeaway, this API economy, it's not going anywhere.
It's here to stay.
APIs are changing how businesses work,
Big time.
and those who get it will thrive.
Absolutely.
You know, the book says API design is becoming a competitive advantage. I hadn't thought about it like that before.
It's interesting, isn't it?
What do you think that means for someone like me, not a developer, but working with tech every day?
Well, it means even if you're not coding,
Right.
knowing these principles helps you make decisions.
Like what services to use.
Exactly, how to integrate them.
Yeah.
Even spot opportunities for innovation.
So I'm better equipped to handle this tech landscape, even if I don't get the nitty-gritty.
Exactly.
This deep dive has been
I
eye-opening.
mean, it's a lot to take in.
We've covered so much.
We have, from the basics to the really detailed stuff.
You know, I was intimidated by the whole API economy thing at first.
I get that.
Another buzzword. you know.
Right, right.
But now I actually understand it.
That's great.
I see how it's relevant to work, even my personal life.
It is everywhere.
You explain things so clearly.
Well, thanks.
I used to think APIs were just for developers,
A common misconception.
but I see them everywhere now. Apps, websites, I appreciate all that behind-the-scenes work.
It's amazing how much we rely on them without even realizing it.
We do. And knowing about good design helps us make better choices about the tech we use, right?
Absolutely. Makes you a more informed user.
Well, I feel much more informed now.
That's what we like to hear.
Before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
The book argues that good API design, it's a competitive advantage.
Right.
What does that mean for your field? Where do you see APIs fitting in the future?
Ooh, that's a good one. Something to ponder for sure.
It is. And if you have any thoughts, let us know.
We'd love to hear them.
Find us on social media or on our website.
Leave us a comment. We read them all.
And if you want to go deeper into this, check out Designing Great Web APIs by James Higginbotham.
Can't recommend it enough.
It's a great resource for anyone who wants to design APIs that developers will actually love.
And that's what it's all about, making tech that people enjoy using.
Well said. And that wraps up another episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.